Hello and good afternoon, and welcome to today's webcast, Tips for Increasing Salesforce Adoption of New Compensation Plans and Platforms. My name is Chaz Bionis, and we'll get started in just a moment, but first I wanted to remind you that all mics have been muted for the duration of, but I encourage you to share any questions or comments you may have during the presentation through the questions feature located in the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll try to answer every question during the broadcast, but if we can't, we'll contact you afterwards by email. This session is being recorded and will be available afterwards for review. And so with that, let me hand over our presentation today to Naveen Nair, Director of Professional Services. Naveen?
Thank you, Chaz. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar session for tips for increasing Salesforce adoption of new compensation plans and platforms. The goal for today really is to share lessons learned, ideas used and applied that have worked on how we can actually make sure that, if you have a new plan going out and you have a new platform you're trying to release, how do you actually get your Salesforce to use it and be on board and accept it, such that your overall efficiency and kind of throughput from them increases as a result of it. Before we jump right into the topic, quick introduction of Optimize itself. We are a sales operations entity. We do provide multiple services. There is a platform that helps us provide these services. Overall, we do have a very holistic approach to sales operations and sales performance management as a solution. We have a pretty diverse global client base, as you can see. We do have operations in multiple countries, that allow us to be very nimble and provide services across the globe for our clients as required. Having said that, I'm going to jump right into the presentation here. So before we get into the meat, I really wanted to set the stage for everybody so that we have a clear understanding of what is it that we're trying to do and who is it that we're trying to do it with, right? So what I had done here is kind of define the key players within the process. On the left, you'll see, you have the compensation plan and the platform, obviously, right? However, there are a lot of other entities that kind of have a pretty leading role within the program that you should be considering. There's the Salesforce themselves, obviously. You have sales leadership. They should have a pretty big voice, right, in making sure that what their Salesforce is asking for, what their actual overall company goals are being kind of driven through the sales compensation plan. The sales compensation team themselves, obviously, you have a very vested interest in making sure that it is a success and the program itself launches great. And the last group, which doesn't get mentioned a lot, but is the executive team, right? The executives at your company obviously have a very vested interest in making sure the money that they're investing, the effort and energy and resources that they are putting behind a new plan or a new platform is going to net results, right? They want to make sure that it is focused energy, it is energy that will actually have throughput, and it is something that they can make sure that they're comfortable signing off on, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who will have to sign off on it. The next piece that I want to go through are really factors that we feel contribute the most within a process of this nature, right? The first one is communication, and I should warn you, I'm probably going to use that word a fair bit during this webinar session, just because it is one of the key factors I feel that is necessary, cannot be ignored, cannot be avoided, cannot be thought about later, but has to be done from the start all the way through the end, and actually even past the launch point, right? Communication has to be there. It has to be strong, it has to be regular, it has to be extremely I guess, useful. It shouldn't just be empty communication, obviously, but it needs to be something that provides knowledge to all your stakeholders and all the entities involved, such that they understand what it is that they want to try accept, or what you want them to try accept. The second part that's almost a byproduct and necessary from communication is engagement. So communication shouldn't be just a one-way street. It's not information that you're passing out to them. It is information you're passing in the hopes of engaging your audience. It could be any one of the players that I mentioned, but it is engaging all of them to be part of the process with you. And again, I do use the we and the you as part of the sales compensation team, who would generally own and drive this process. But it is making sure that everybody else is engaged in that process alongside, so that you have ownership coming in from all those levels. You have agreement. You have kind of the approvals and like the support that is necessary to push you through from the start through all the way. The last piece is something that I personally feel adds a lot to this process, which is branding. I think branding as a concept is very familiar to everyone in day-to-day life, right? There are brands we recognize, there are brands that we're aware of, there are brands that we feel have value over other brands that are building value or just don't have value yet. Why, when we use it every day in our lives, isn't it not something that we can apply as a concept to sales compensation and sales performance management, right? Let's brand it. Branding as a concept is not new. It's not something that we need to invent from scratch. It is something that we can actually apply pretty easily with a fair amount of thought, just a little bit of pre-planning, and some consistent approach in terms of, what does our brand stand for? Let's define what our brand goals are. And they should pretty much line up with your program goals. And then obviously you're creating awareness, right? You're allowing everyone to know there is this brand that exists. This is the aim of the brand. This is what it sells as a product, which then would promote people to be more aware of the fact that, hey, you know what, this is out there. We know about this brand. We can talk about the brand. And it's something that you can use as a talking point as you move through the process of kind of deploying a whole new plan or program or any changes in the future as well. So next, I'm actually going to jump into plan acceptance, right? What does it take to actually get a plan accepted? Like, what are the key features there that you want to think through?
Naveen, let me just interrupt you before you go any further away from the previous topic. We do have a question about the branding. Are there benefits to going through a branding exercise with your company?
Sure, there are short-term and long-term benefits to this. So the short-term benefits obviously is that you can fit it all under one umbrella. So it's not that you're talking about the incentive plan, or you're talking about the incentive platform, or you're talking about the incentive team at your organization. It really covers all of the above, right? It is making a combined effort and like a single face that everyone can refer to. And it's not just a Salesforce that you want referring to it this way. It's your HR teams, it's your finance teams, it's your marketing group. They all will become hopefully aware of the brand that you are building as a sales compensation team or sales performance team. The brand value, once it builds up, is something that you can use kind of like, cashing chips and go, hey, look, we are this brand. We are the sales compensation. Here's our brand. We're trying to do this program, and this could be in the future, right? What we find is there's a lot of positive reactions in terms of everyone knows what a brand is, everyone recognizes it, and once people start recognizing it and start accepting it as an established brand, when you go out into the market and you kind of like want to do something new, you have brand value that you can then leverage to help you achieve what you want a lot easier than if you're just a sales compensation team. It's a very I want to say thin line between the two in that technically you are building a brand value in terms of the sales compensation program and the success that you provide, but the act of going through a branding process itself, it has value in itself without needing to be tied to anything single. It's the brand itself that builds that value over time.
Good, thank you. I think that should answer your question.
Great. So coming to plan acceptance, what does it need? What does it take to get you more acceptance from your field so that they trust the plan, so that they understand the plan, so that they agree with what it is that you're trying to do with the plan? Kind of broken it down into what, why, and how. Now the what's simple in that you obviously have to tell them what the actual plan is, right? The mechanics of the plan, the calculations, the rules, the criteria, great. That's usually things that have to be done regardless of. The two that I feel that the what sits on but is never explored clearly are the whys and the hows. Why is there a new plan? For the most case, you know what? There's obviously going to be an old plan that exists that you are now replacing or modifying, tweaking, or just completely scrapping and starting over from scratch. But why are you doing it, right? There's obviously business reasons or organizational reasons, goals changing, change of focus. Share that why, right? I feel as somebody who's being asked to do something, it always helps me when I know why I'm being asked to do it, right? You can tell me what I have to do, great, but now tell me why I'm doing it. It provides that transparency, openness of communication, right? It is that engagement to let them know, hey, we're not just forcing this down your throat because we feel we need you to do it. Here's an explanation of why we want you to do it and why we think it's was necessary to go down this road of looking at a new plan. Now, parallel to that, so is the how you did it, right? Now, this is very personal to the sales performance teams in that you've been told what you need to achieve, you've been told why you need to achieve it. How you go about doing it is actually a success story in itself, right? Generally, I find that our partners, the sales compensation program people, are extremely excited about the plan generally because they've gone through this whole process of designing it, doing all the research, understanding the market, understanding their sales force, understanding their own products, understanding what it is that needs to be done in the next year, the next 5 years. And you've designed this great plan to sync up all of those, completely distinctive features and factors, and you've built this plan that you think will achieve it, right? So you're excited. There's a lot of internal like noise and kind of energy. Share that, right? You guys obviously did a great job in building this out. Brag about it. Feel free to go out, tell the field, hey guys, here's the process we went through. Here's what all we did. Here's all the steps that we took. Here's all the things we thought about. It's all great information, right? Because now you are transferring that energy and excitement and enthusiasm, and you're sharing it with your field. Hopefully, some of it's going to be infectious. They'll catch, right? They're also going to understand, hey, there's been a lot of work that went into it. It's not just a plan document that they get at the end of the day that they have to follow. There's a lot of history and background to this plan document. Great. Let me see how I can become part of the story, this energy. You're promoting yourselves, right? And I think it's very well deserved in the amount of energy and time and effort and thought that goes into it. It should be shared, right? It is information that should be put out there so that they can kind of jump on board with you. The last piece, and I've kind of understated it a little bit here, are tools and support to succeed, right? So along with sharing and communicating all of this, you want to make sure that you're providing them additional tools to help understand the plan. Generally, yes, you can throw out the calculation and say, here's the formula we're going to use, here are all the factors and metrics and products and how you're going to get paid on it. Sometimes just having a visual tool or an interactive tool like a what if calculator or a plan calculator is great because they can generally tie action to how much am I going to get paid for this? And you can help them calculate that down on their own. Mind you, it's going to be, them kind of putting in what they think they make and how much they think they can hit. But it is something that helps them understand at a more basic level of, if I put in this effort, this is how much I'm going to get paid for it. And the second part is the support that you would provide as part of that process, which is making sure that you're kind of with them and that you guys are all working together as a team. So it's not that here's your plan, go deliver, and then we'll tell you how much you get paid because of how much you did. It's more of this is a team effort to get us to that point. There's a company goal that we're all trying to reach, and there's a larger team other than just a sales force behind all of this. And then as a byproduct, obviously they're going to get, there's going to be sales compensation coming out of it, and they'll get paid for their effort and all of that. But the effort should be more to make it a larger team effort so that they don't feel like they're just kind of working on their own. Because yes, that can lead to a lot of disgruntled Salesforce employees who don't trust the plan, who are second guessing everything, questioning everything. Hopefully, with the process of going through this, we've seen that it actually avoids all the unnecessary questions, and you get very focused questions. There will be questions. You won't avoid those, but what you will avoid are maybe some of the negative naysayers or the people who are just kind of not convinced and it's a comfort level versus an actual math or valid concerns that they have. Going into the second part of this equation, which is really platform acceptance, right? So you have a great plan, and you're also releasing a great platform that you want to make sure that they can use. You'll see that the graphic itself is just about a loop, right? It is a repetitive cycle that you want to try bring in as a culture. It's about feedback. It's about getting your sales force involved early. I did mention the key players. It's not just for the plan, it's for the platform too, right? Give them the ability to contribute to the platform that they're going to eventually use, right? You're going to build champions. You're going to build people doing PR for you, hopefully, and because they are involved, they feel like they own part of the process, that they had an opportunity to contribute, that they feel like they're part of the team. At which point, we find that the acceptance rates actually up drastically, where if the only PR is coming from the sales compensation team kind of trying to say, hey, this is a great tool, we built this platform for you guys, it's beautiful, it has all this information. If the sales force is hearing it from their own people, the adoption rates are considerably higher just because it is a peer-based evaluation that's being provided versus an external source. The strength of that really can't be underemphasized just because of the fact it is so powerful. As you know, it's the same as if you imagine someone telling you as a peer saying, hey, this came out, I really liked it, you guys should try it out because it's working for me, versus someone who built a tool coming in and going, you should use this tool, it's the best thing ever. The message changes, the perspectives change, and it's something that it should start with the Salesforce and it should end with the Salesforce, where once you launch it, that shouldn't be your end, right? You should definitely be taking feedback from them moving forward as well, so that it's not a one-time and then done. It's a repetitive process where you can continuously look at what is their need, how can we meet it, and then looking to see how that can be kind of put into practice. Two other points in here. Remember usability. I feel like this is something people forget once they get too busy and caught up in the platform building process. You don't have to show everything possible, right? There's a lot of information usually available with sales compensation. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of analytics, there's a lot of reporting that can be shown. What do they actually need, right? Overloading a platform will usually overwhelm your sales force. They're not using the platform as their core responsibility for their job. It is a ancillary support, right? It is to help them, enable them, sorry, to be more effective, understand where they're heading, how they can kind of make tweaks, maybe where do they have opportunities they've missed out. That should be the information that we try to put out on the dashboard or a report or, on their portals. It shouldn't be every single piece of information available, and it is an easy trap to fall into as you're designing, because you suddenly know that you have all this information, you have all these mediums of reporting, and then all of a sudden you want to do it all. Kind of curb some of that enthusiasm, direct the energy towards what is absolutely necessary, and this is where the feedback from the sales force becomes more important, is they can usually tell you what is really important to them. Mind you, they'll have other things they'll ask for, but understanding that and getting their perspective will help you focus your energies on what it is that you want to present versus everything that's possible to present. Last piece of platform acceptance is training. If you release a great platform but don't train them on it, chances are they're not going to use it, or a lot of them will not figure out how it's going to work. You want to build a nice comprehensive training plan that is appropriate for your sales force. So just in this webinar, of all the people that are attending, I can almost guarantee all your sales forces have different dynamics, different working conditions, different levels of aptitude for new technology. What you want to do is assess it based on your specific organization. What makes sense, right? Do you want to do a full-on, hands-on, all-day session where you sit down with them and you take them through it? Do you want to do WebEx, or do you just want to do a training document that explains everything you feel is necessary and you send it out and you feel that will cover it? You really do need to have that conversation, though. It is something that you should plan out. You should figure out what it is that makes sense for your training, and then make sure that you have a plan in place to communicate, hey, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and make sure that the field is ready to receive that as a, I guess, vehicle to help you kind of release the platform and get it out there to the field. The last piece really is just combining all of it together and looking at it as a overall equation. So,
Naveen, so again, I just want to get, before you go any further, we do have a question on the branding aspect. I'm not branding, sorry, the risk of, let me just read it. How do you manage the risk of having the sales force too involved in the feedback process?
Okay, so that is an interesting question. So we've faced this a couple of times where if you give the Salesforce open forum to give feedback, they have a lot of feedback to give. And I'm sure, I'm hoping some of you are actually nodding your heads because you've gone through this process and you know what it feels like. Once you let them know, hey, what do you like, what do you not like, they're going to give you 100 to 1,000 things that they think absolutely necessary or don't need or won't. What we find is the easy way to kind of head this off at the pass is you set expectations up front, right? You do want to engage them. You do want their feedback. You don't want any of it to be curtailed. But you also want to set a clear expectation that, hey, we want the feedback. What we are going to do is take the feedback and then assess based on timelines, budget, system capabilities, what is possible, right? And we will deliver on what is possible. That way the field doesn't feel like you're just asking for the sake of asking, because there is actual feedback that you want to incorporate into the system without really opening that door of discontent where they feel like they've asked for all these things and nothing's happening, right? You want to be very clear that, hey, look, we will not be able to, act on every single piece of feedback that you give us, but there will be some that we will incorporate, and then over time we will look at what makes sense, and then where possible we will incorporate more and more. Sometimes the act of listening to the field and giving them the opportunity to express their views actually has as much impact as actually providing the end result that they were asking for. Some of it really is that need to be heard, where we find a lot of times we'll go in and we're talking to an organization and the sales force has no direct voice, right? They do have indirect, channels of submitting things, but there's no direct voice that they have. And providing that ability to provide direct feedback to the groups, it changes the dynamics of the relationship, right? It gives them that ownership level goes up, the ability to accept new things because they feel like they've had an opportunity to influence it. It changes their acceptance rate, and we've seen things turn around to almost like a 20 to 40% change in adoption of a new plan or a new platform versus what currently existed based on, the communication gap and the discontent that was kind of being bred because of that. Okay. So that kind of going to the equation for success, this kind of sums it all together. It's a nice little graphic. I think for me, this brings all the different elements in together. So you have your audience all the way in the right. It is a sales force at the end of the day. It doesn't matter who your larger stakeholders, executives, sales leaders. If the sales force doesn't agree, that is your audience. That is the majority of your audience, and that's who you need to be cognizant of and making sure that they're on board the whole way through. All the way on the other end is the planning elements, right? It's communication, and you'll see that overlaps all the others. It is a base. It should be our foundation. It's not about over-communication. It is about appropriate levels of communication to make sure that people are engaged, that they understand the tools you're providing. So even if you build a great tool to support them, do they understand it? Will they use it? If they don't, it's just going to sit there and you've just wasted all your effort. And the last piece is transparency, right? One of the most important things is you need the trust of the sales force. You need to make sure that they understand and they trust you, which will reduce a lot of the doubt and the comfort level issues that you will have in terms of plan acceptance and platform acceptance, because otherwise you're going to have the sales force shadow accounting. They're going to be spending less time selling and more time figuring out if they're getting paid correctly for what they're selling, which really isn't the dynamics you want. You want the ratio to be very less shadow accounting and more selling, because the more time they spend selling, overall everything just kind of moves along smoother and they're happier. But it is a byproduct of making sure that they trust the plan, they trust the platform, and they're comfortable with it. Hopefully, having gone through the exercise and kind of implementing some of these smaller tweaks, you'll see some of these results popping through. But at this time, we've kind of come to the end of our material.
Well, thank you very much, Naveen, and we thank everyone for joining us today. We hope that today's information was helpful and remind you that any questions that you may have additionally can be sent to the address on the screen directly to Naveen, or connect with him on LinkedIn, of course. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day.